Welcome to Energy Linguist, a sacred space for awakening souls ready to learn how language shapes consciousness and discover what energy has been speaking all along. I am Laura Ahern, the Energy Linguist, a spiritual channel and the founder of Linguistic Consciousness Studies. In this podcast, I share divine transmissions and teach you to decode the language shaping your consciousness so that you can heighten your intuition, claim your calling, and learn to create consciously instead of unconsciously. Take a breath. This is where unconscious creation becomes creative mastery. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Energy Linguist podcast. I'm your host, Laura Ahern, the Energy Linguist, and I'm so excited to be here with you today to explore these transmissions that are coming through from highest guidance to support you on the evolution of your own path. Today's message is really powerful because Divinity is stepping up today with this encouragement and strong reminder that you have a mission on this planet. And more than just a mission, you have a unique medicine that is meant to be shared with the world. The message that started coming through very strongly for me in recent days is around this truth that exists, that there is a medicine the world needs. And it's a particular kind of medicine that doesn't get to be shared unless it's shared through you. And it's imperative that you hear that and you feel that in the truth of your soul. Only through the feeling, only through the heart and the conviction that lies within that can you fully rise to the level you're meant to rise to and discover your unique medicine to share with the world. I'm sure many of you would agree that the world is in an extraordinary amount of chaos right now, and that there's much pain, anger, challenges that we're facing. And as much as our human self wants to react to that world with fear or judgment or maybe control, Divinity is bringing you into the truth of knowing that the greatest impact that you can have on the world actually begins within yourself. And when we're willing to do our inner work and refine ourselves through our innermost experiences, we access the capacity to release and discover our own medicine. It truly does become the ripple effect of peace, love, and healing that the world requires. And especially during this awakening era, your greatest impact will not come from wrestling with the outside world. It'll come from doing this inner work of being able to hold yourself in this unconditional love and positive regard. The truth of the matter is this: we cannot change anything that feels dense, negative, toxic, by investing ourselves and matching our vibration with that density. However, when we're willing to step within our own world and discover the areas within ourselves that need to be loved, that need to be seen, we suddenly cultivate something within the self that we can then share with the world. Many of us in our souls yearn to see the world in more peace, in more unconditional love, in more acceptance. However, we cannot even ourselves share that with the world if it doesn't already exist within us. And so if we're not in a state of compassion, of acceptance, of unconditional love for the self, we don't even have that to offer the world. And so today, Divinity wants to bring you into the knowing of how powerful your heart is in your journey to your highest expression, and that this journey will allow you to come into the full embodiment of the medicine that you are. Many of us, especially as spiritually sensitive souls, yearn to help the world and influence the world in some sort of way. And it's an important piece to remind ourselves about, that we often desire this through this misaligned idea, this false premise that the impact we desire to have is only available to us through external means. And what Divinity is trying to convey with this message is that we often feel that our value is in the doing. Our value is in the sacrifice. And today, your angels, your loved ones, your highest guidance, and your highest self is here to remind you that you are the medicine when you're in your wholeness, just through being that wholeness, not through any extraordinary amount of doing or self-sacrifice. You are being invited into the knowing that your presence and your vibration is where that magic begins. And to assist you in the embracing and the embodiment of that knowing today, Divinity wants me to speak to you about our energetic system and the influences that often keep us from discovering our own soul's calling. If you've been with me on previous podcasts, you know we have explored more than once our chakra system, this ancient wisdom that is communicating with us at all times, tuning in to our physical body and understanding the ancient wisdom of our chakra system often holds more value than one might first think. When we understand the nuances of our energy centers and what each particular vibration is governing, we then empower ourselves with the ability to decipher the messages that are coming through from a more subtle, invisible realm. The messages that are coming through from spirit, and not just an external spirit of co-creation with the divine, but the messages that are coming through from our spirit. What rises within our thoughts, our emotions, and our physical body are not a problem. They're actually the answer. They're the message that is coming through from this deepest, most aligned part of you, this core truth that exists within you, to provide you insight and information on where you are in your path and whether or not you are in the full alignment of what your soul is attempting to draw you into. And so today, Divinity wants me to talk to you about our first 3 energy centers, moving from our very first root chakra, moving up into that sacral energy, and then just above it into that solar plexus. And as we near the end of this transmission, they're going to draw us even higher upward into a deeper understanding of how our heart chakra, that fourth chakra, plays a role in you accessing your own unique medicine and bringing it into an offering that this planet is calling for. So I want to begin with recognizing that there is a desire that exists within your soul that is attempting to be made manifest through your material self, first and foremost. So imagine this. Our nadis, our energy channels that move up our spinal column, move in this ascending direction and descending direction. However, the ascending direction, as we move from the root to that sacral, upward to the solar plexus, and then crossing over that heart to access these higher spiritual centers, this energy, this ascending energy, is known as our liberation channel. And so I want you to imagine that divinity has ignited something within the material self, encoded it within the material self, and is attempting to help liberate you from all of the limits you perceive exist within your physical body. All the limits you perceive exist within your material self, to allow that energy, that desire, that passion to rise and come into co-creation with the higher spiritual selves, the higher chakra system of that throat, third eye, and crown that give way to our access and connection, deepest connection with God. As this desire, this passion that exists within the material self rises, we start to look towards where it exists first within our material centers. And that desire, that passion, the seed of it lies within your sacral center, that second chakra, the one just above the root. And it's important for us to look towards this today because the messages coming through have everything to do with the nuances of this center and how we get not only confused by our human experience, but very avoidant and often don't realize that much of our actions that we may be taking are an attempt to satisfy this center in a way that keeps us trapped in our limits rather than liberated from those limits. And so I want to dive in to talking about the nuance of the sacral center for a moment. Our sacral energy center is well known as our sexuality, the center of desire and passion. And many people who don't know the deeper nuances of the vibration of our system really kind of narrow it down to only being about this, about sex and passion and reproduction. And though this system does house all of that beautiful energy, there's much more to understand about the nuances of those vibrations that will help you to understand the truth about what your passion, your desires are really calling you into. Your sacral chakra holds your desires and passions, but not just in a sexual way. This is the governing center of our sensuality as well. And it is our creative center. It's literally the center which we are able to engage with to create human life. And within it, beyond just the sexuality, is this deep passion that exists for us to reveal and expose our unique self. And it's the self that is so unique, it's so different that it feels extraordinarily vulnerable to us. It's why many of us kind of hold and contract around this sacral energy, often around our sensuality, sexuality, playfulness, because we fear being fully vulnerable. And in order for us to unleash our own unique medicine and ignite our inner calling, this center must be fluid and operating in a way in which we are engaging with the willingness to be vulnerably ourselves, uniquely ourselves, to be different and understand that there's invaluableness in our differentness. The message that Divinity is bringing through today is awareness, an awareness that's important for us to see in order to prevent ourselves from misstepping or tripping or unintentionally keeping ourselves stuck in our limits. And the messaging is how we are engaging and satisfying this center. Many of you may be familiar with Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. There is a standard edition that exists that I don't think this nuance is mentioned in, but many of you may not know there's actually an expanded version of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. And within this book, he actually starts to talk about sexual abstinence with the intent of holding that creative energy so that it can be directed towards your determined desire, directed towards what you have identified as your purpose, so that that energy can be utilized to bring your desire into fulfillment in the quickest way possible. And this podcast is not for me to suggest abstinence to you. This podcast is to help bring you into the awareness that this energy center is seeking to feel fulfilled, satisfied. And often we are doing this with distractions for the self. Many of you have a calling that feels so impossible or so different that there's this fear that gets ignited around the attempt, even the consideration of being so outrageous, so radical, of being willing to be different and show up with a different viewpoint, or maybe show up in contrast to what many other people in the world are saying or doing. And when we feel the contraction of this fear in that root energy, there is this yearning kind of to pull us out of that fear, to kind of move that energy from the root upward by engaging with that sacral energy center, by engaging with that desire center. And what happens is that because we're seeking pleasure, we're seeking to fulfill this yearning to feel passionate. We often seek things that give us this temporary fix to kind of soothe and ease the uncomfortable tide that's rising within. So what happens is, instead of recognizing that the way out of that fear is to be vulnerably ourselves, to be exposed, to be playful and joyful, different, we often will lean into trying to satisfy the center with things that make us experience pleasure. And yes, that can be sex. However, it also can be food. It can be TV. It can be Netflix. It can be whatever it is that ignites a lot of these positive hormones in our body, these dopamine triggers that say, oh, this feels good to me. This center, whether we are over engaging with the way we're eating or seeking love or sex or pleasure, is seeking to be expressed and experienced. And when we come into the awareness that there is a desire that exists there within us, a desire that's looking to be felt and seen and heard, we have the opportunity to become more intentional about what we're doing with this energy. Because what is required for us to move forward on our own soul's calling, on this journey, our own hero's journey, that will be extraordinarily challenging for us, not just once, but many times. Many obstacles will arise. Many opportunities will arise for us to choose ourselves. And in order for us to walk this path and not only come into the fulfillment of what's calling us, but to not quit when things feel impossible, is that we must understand that there's an extraordinary amount of courage that is required. Now, our courage, this energy of courage, is governed by our solar plexus. So if you can imagine, the fear in the root starts to hold, and the answer is to ignite that yin sacral energy and to allow it to rise, moving upward into the solar plexus. And so one of the ways in which we can support ourselves in bringing our deepest desires, our soul's calling, into fulfillment is actually to utilize this yang energy center, this masculine energy center of the solar plexus in an intentional way. If you've been with me on previous episodes, you've heard me talk about the root and the solar plexus energies. And it's easy to assume when we speak of them in a certain light that there's this negative connotation around the masculine energies of these centers. But this isn't the truth. These centers are not personal. They're not polarized. They're not good or bad, right? There's this unpolarized nature to them that's actually extraordinarily neutral. And it has everything to do with how we're engaging with them or deciding around them that causes these energies to either be balanced or imbalanced for us. They're either working for us and with us, or they can be working against us. And one of the ways in which you can allow this really powerful, fiery, bold solar plexus energy to serve bringing your desire into this world is to engage with that courage. The courage to be different, to choose it, to walk that path. The solar plexus energy governs our personal power, our identity. And often we act unconsciously in accordance with whatever identity we're holding, even when it's a misidentity. And you hear me talk about misidentity in my book, The True Calling, because it's really important for us to understand that we all, on some level, have held and do hold a misidentity of the self. It's an identity based on the feedback we received while we were developing our sense of self. And the feedback we received is ancestral. It comes from all of these past generations. And we witnessed how they believed about themselves, how they believed about the world, and how they interacted with what they believed their own limits were. And so we've adopted much of that. Now that we are independent thinkers and we are moving into more consciousness expansion as we evolve through this awakening, we have this real power vibrationally on the planet. It's different. It's more accessible to us, this power to choose differently about ourselves. And when we choose to believe differently about ourselves and what's possible for us, we will act in accordance with this belief. The action is such an important part of bringing your medicine into the world. And courage is required. But not just the courage and the fire of this will that exists within our solar plexus. It's not just our personal will that I've identified this, I want it. I'm going to make it happen, because that is much of that young solar plexus energy. That center can be reinforced by incorporating the heart chakra, by partnering it up with another yin center that is drawing that energy further up our channel, liberating us further. And so I want to share with you something really powerful to bring you into the vibration of the word courage. Because though our solar plexus does govern our courage and our belief in the self, the value in the self, there is a vibration at the core of the word courage that points us to the embracing of our heart energy to reinforce the capacity of this solar plexus energy. When you look at the history, the etymology of the word courage, the core, the Latin piece of that word core means heart. And in ancient Latin, the heart was understood not merely as an organ, but as the seat of feeling, the seat of will, the seat of inner life. And what's beautiful about this is that the solar plexus energy holds this personal will. And so to know that this courage, the seat of will, exists within this, as well as the seat of feeling, is actually pointing us to the evolution of the energy moving into the heart, into the space where we are unconditionally loving the self for the differentness that we are, so that we can allow this energy to rise and begin to interact and co-create with our highest spiritual centers. And it's really important for us to see and understand this. What many people don't understand about the chakras, especially when we're just teaching on the surface level this way, is that they're not just independently separate, where they're each governing something different. There's actually an extraordinary amount of interaction that is happening with them, which is why I teach in depth about this with my students. Not only do we have these overlapping areas of each chakra system, we also have what I call partner chakras, of chakras that are reliant on one another to kind of bridge this gap, to cross over this threshold and allow the material self and the spiritual self to be interacting and supporting one another as we evolve. Particularly right now, I want to focus on the idea that these chakras, as they rise, as they ascend, and as they fall, they descend, they don't just stack on one another, they overlap in the field. And so there's some essences, for instance, of the solar plexus chakra that overlap with the heart chakra, and they start to kind of govern nuanced pieces of the same thing. So when you hear that courage means at its core the seat of feeling, it's showing you this area of emotion that begins to exist within our personal identities, our personal solar plexus energy, and also exists within our heart chakra. This really powerful bridge, the center of our emotion. It's really important to see this because courage as a vibration doesn't mean what we often use it to mean. It doesn't mean the absence of fear. Some people say things like, well, I don't feel courageous. And I think the misunderstanding is that they're expecting that courage feels powerful, and it doesn't. Rarely does courage feel powerful until you've engaged with it and proven to yourself how powerful you are. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's actually the willingness to act from the heart despite the fear. So when you look at this entire message that Divinity has been channeling today, it comes full circle. We talked about the fear that exists, that contracts when we go to allow a desire that exists within us to come to life. And what these divine messengers are bringing to you is the deep understanding that you are being encouraged to act in spite of the fear. You're being encouraged to act from the heart with unconditional self-love and courage despite the fear that you're experiencing. This is a beautiful reminder that our path isn't always what we think it is, and is also perfectly made. Oftentimes we resist following the path of our true calling and embracing what we truly desire because we don't like the discomfort that we're experiencing on the path. I often say the path to our awakening looks nothing like the awakened state because it's the path on which we're refining ourselves, we're challenging ourselves, we're learning about ourselves through some of the most challenging experiences that you could ever imagine. There are points on this path of impossibility where we find ourselves faced with something that feels extraordinarily impossible. And then through the conviction of our soul, through the courage of the heart, we have the opportunity to discover that all things are possible, that we can rise against all things, that we can grant ourselves permission to be beautifully different, and to fully understand and decide, even before we might feel it, that that differentness holds the key to our unique medicine that we're meant to share with the world. And so today, I want to invite you into fully receiving this transmission, to knowing and believing with the conviction of your soul that when you're hearing me speak and channel these messages live from divine guidance, that you're receiving more than just words. You're receiving a transmission that is healing your very frequency, that is cleansing your very patterns, that is reorganizing your energetic architecture to align it and stabilize it for what you're truly made for. And I hope today you'll breathe a deep breath in and fully choose to receive this gift that God is granting you. The knowing that you are the medicine, that your life has extraordinary meaning, and that you are here to touch the world in miraculous ways that no one else can do quite like you. I hope you feel the love that is meant for you today and always. Namaste. Thank you for receiving these messages with an open heart. If you're ready to trust your intuition, read the energy speaking through your life, and claim the calling waiting for you, it's time to begin with the Rise. Through the Rise, you can become trained in Honorea Reiki, the first sovereign woman-channeled Reiki lineage in history, and receive a full year of healing, mentorship, and community. Visit lauraahern.com/rise to find out more. Everything you need to know is already speaking to you, and I can teach you to translate it. Until next time, trust what you feel, honor what you know, and watch your language. It's creating everything.